I'm Dave, and I'm an adult child, an alcoholic, and many or much more than that. Yeah, it was great to be able to do some service here at the group because I've got so much out of the group over the last few years, and it's absolutely been amazing. And to meet some of you in Dublin in the conference was amazing as well. Yeah, I'm Dave, and I suppose for me, some of my story is that I grew up um in an alcoholic home. I suppose my mother was alcoholic; she's an addict, and an adult child of an alcoholic, and I suppose I grew up in a place there, and when my father left when I was 7, and I grew up full of fear and anxiety. And I suppose for me, yeah, the fear, I can just remember that being having no support from such a young age. I remember going into school. I used to go to school as a kid, and I had nobody to help me with my homework. And every day I go in making excuses, and I'm going through and the fear because I knew he didn't believe me. And the teacher just say, "Okay, what's your excuse today?" And it was crazy, like, but so I left school. Basically, I was kept back in fifth class twice, and then I was supposed to go to sixth class, but I thought, no, I'm going uh, to secondary school with my friends, and I jumped, and it was too big, and then I was gone, and I suppose I went through life then really with no education, no support, and with little confidence, no confidence, and so I was just growing up in a home where, my mother done her best, but the alcoholism played a big part because with no parental, I suppose, there really guidance, and there was a lot of violence at home with the brothers, with the elder brothers, serious violence, and I was hospitalized a few times. And outside of the home, I would have been, when I was young, I would have had a lot of sexual abuse done to me. And for me, I just went through life like just sort of so anxious, not fitting in anywhere, not even in my home. Like I basically played the lost child. I was in the middle of the four. There was four boys, and I was in the middle, and I just didn't feel like I got on with anyone. And I just felt I was always running away. I'd jump on a bus and go away, and the police would bring me back, even at such a young age. I just never wanted to be where I was. And I suppose I grew up there, like just I was going through life. I didn't know who I was, what I was. I started working, I worked in building sites. I had no confidence to learn a trade. I ended up just basically working for alcohol. Once I started drinking alcohol, I didn't get this big wow factor. So my main, I suppose my main addiction or dependency, I suppose my primary one would have been codependency, and then alcoholism, and and I suppose I didn't know anything about adult children until I got older. Like, but I knew I could see it in my home. I could see it in my mother. I knew there was something wrong. I could see her alcoholism. I could see that. Like, but basically for me was that I went through life and just broken. Like I was really a shell of a person because I had no confidence. I was spotty, and then from the abuse and from all the violence, I ended up actually. I stuttered. I had a stammer all my life because of it, and it made it worse. I couldn't talk to people, especially girls or women. I couldn't talk to them, and I blush, and I was absolutely. I always felt like this big spotlight on me, and I hated myself. Like, so I grew up in that environment like that, and going through life. So, but when I found alcohol, for me, it was just I just used it to get out of my head because I couldn't stay in my head. My head was like a bad neighborhood, and it's the saying, hey, if you go into your head like that, you're gonna be moved. and for me, basically, I grew up just absolutely feeling so isolated, and I had no support. As I said, no support. But basically, as well, what happened for me was that outside of the home, then between abuse, and then on the other side, the police, because my two older brothers were getting into trouble with the police, and I just seemed to follow suit. And then the police were at me, and I used to so I'd nowhere to go. I used to have to go across the neighbors to try to escape the violence because the hospitals knew I was getting stitched up and brought down by police cars and ambulances, and the hospital knew nobody done anything about it. There was no social workers involved. There was no, the police said, which was in charge. I said, yeah. But I was just going back into the same environment, the same thing. So for me, then it was like I just had such a hatred for the police and anyone. I just went out. I just had such a hatred because I just felt no one cared. And then what happened was I didn't care because my attitude was if people are going to treat me like an animal, I'm going to behave like an animal, and that's what happened. I but but the reality of it was what I learned was hurt people, and I was so badly hurt that I just thought to myself, right, what I need to do is I need to become the best actor ever and just become. I'm not frightened, and I'm not afraid. Like so, alcohol let me pull that off. And what happened through that sort of into life is just going through. I became a great actor, but I got into a lot of trouble with the police. I got into trouble with courts. I got into a lot of trouble through drinking alcohol, and I just wanted to get out of my head. But the reality was that can somebody do that? Thank you. Yeah, I suppose for me there, like I suppose in 2000, I suppose the year 2000, how my change started to come across was that I stopped drinking alcohol. There was a woman down the road from me here, and I used to get a loan of £20 off her, and she said to me one night, there's on the way to a darts match. I played the pub darts, and I was on the way to the pub, and at this night she just said to me, for feck's sake, Hennessy, she said, I don't know who owes this £20. You or me? She said, it's going back and forward so much, and the shame of it, I went to the pub and I had 4 pints of Guinness and something in my head said, that's it, I'm done. So from that day to this, I haven't taken an alcoholic drink, but for the best part of 2 years, I started taking a lot of other substances. And I just switched from one to the other. And, but then that quickly, the drug side of it just got me spiraling so quickly that I was always quite close to suicide thoughts and a couple of attempts and that so the drug side of it got me down so quickly. But what happened then was I ended up coming into AA 6 weeks, 15th of February 2002, and I've kept coming back, and I was a little while around there. I was in AA thinking, am I an alcoholic because of my genes, or is it because of whatever, just is it, because I drank too much. But I did an addiction stuff, that course, and I learned so much about it. And that's where I learned adult children of alcoholics. And I was reading lots of books and lots of different things. And I could identify with it because what I learned was when I grew up in a home, I was in a home where with alcoholism, and I had a mother, and I knew she loved me to bits, but unfortunately, the thing was with my mother was because of her alcoholism and her addiction was her message was, I love you, go away. It was hot and cold. I was being pulled and pushed all the time. And that's what happened to me. That's what happened in all my relationships. I crave love and people from codependency, but from the adult child side of me, then gets overwhelmed very easy and pushes the person away and makes up all mad things in my head. This is why, and it's just I'm not used to intimacy and to love. for the intimacy part for me, like I have such a resistance to growing up. I really do, and for me, it's what I learned. Like, I seen it in my mother. She could never be direct, she'd always ask me indirectly, or she'd just blank out and not, I'd be asking her something, she'd blank out, and for me, I suppose the thing was there that I learned is that, yeah, I'm emotionally, I never had the support to grow up. I never had the opportunity. I never had the conversations with people. I never had the table talk. I never had the education at the table where people spoke real stuff, So what happened was I've come into life and started growing up, tried to grow up emotionally since I've tried to grow up emotionally since I come into recovery, and sometimes I'm okay. That most times I suck, because I'm just it's hard. It really is. I find it hard, but it was supposed to me. But like the education part, I suppose for me, one of the greatest things I've done is that I've always wanted to go back and do education and do my leaving or leaving cert. But what happened was because the shame. I remember in secondary school when I got my results and my intercert, which is which was a big deal. The teacher, she said to me on the stage, she turned around and said, give me results. And she said to me, David, she said, I'm very, very disappointed in you, she said to me, because I would never attend school. I had to go, I couldn't sit there. I was way behind, I was like looking into a bush. I didn't know what they were talking about. I couldn't catch up. I was way out of my league. But the reality of it was, that woman didn't know that I was sitting in that classrooms with stitches in my head and my legs, my body, where I was at being stabbed with a sword or a knife or hit with a bottle or glasses or the physical, the emotional, the sexual. She didn't know any of that. But yet, you know, I'm here today. I'm able to talk about it. I don't have the shame because it's not my stuff. All of that stuff that was done to me is not my shame. I was able to go in here. Thank God. I've done 15 years. I've done about 16, 17 years the therapy. I did 15 years in the Rape Crisis Centre. Now, I was never raped, but I was molested many, many, many times by many people. But I was never raped. But the reality of it is that in there, for the first time, I found people who made me feel human. From the moment I walked in, they made me feel human, and they helped me lose my shame. I done 15 years one-to-one. I done 4 men's groups with just men. I done 4 mixed groups with men and women, and I done workshops. I done family systems. I done a lot of work in there. I've had to do a lot of that. But the one thing I got from sitting in there was I felt human, and I just said to myself, something, Dave. You were one of the most luckiest people in the world. You were sitting here now, and you are one of these few people that can sit here and can talk about this. You're able to do it. Like, it was very, very deep work, but it gave me a good acceptance of me and where I am. And the reality was, every time I went, I remember I'd go from here, from Dalkey into Dublin, and by the time I get in and out, it's half the day gone. But I remember it was 1 hour and it would go so quick, but I kept all the pink cards. I have them in there in a box. And they're piled about that high, that high. So anytime I'm getting to, I think that's some of the work that you've done in yourself, Dave. And one of my therapists said to me, Dave, be gentle with yourself. Where you're coming from, it's a miracle that you're alive. So what I've learned in these rooms, to keep it, I got to give it away. I got to be there for other people, but I've also got to be there for me. And I always hear like, oh, hey, yeah, or whatever, is a selfish program. It is not a selfish program. It's a selfless program, and it's about being there for others. But the reality of it is, there's nothing being selfish about taking care of yourself and meeting your own needs so you can be there when someone actually wants you to be available. For me, that's what I have to do. I've gone out. I've really put my heart and soul into my recovery. I'm now a social worker myself. I got a master's. I went to master's level in UCD in Dublin. I've gone out. I've degrees. And for me, like from where I come from, the reality of it, I should be dead, and yeah, I don't ever want to take a drink again. I don't want to be, in a relationship as well where I just want to be grown up, but I know to do it, I have to do it slowly. And, I've the adult children books I'm reading over 20 years. Like that's how long I'm there. Like, and I'm just going to finish on this. Um, for me, I remember all that pull and push stuff there when I was there. I was in relationships and I'd pull a girl to me and then I'd get close and I'd push away and I'd run away. And I said to myself, can't handle this, I can't handle this. Oh, my head would be wrecked. I remember saying to girl, I'm sorry, I don't know, I think I'm mad. I don't know what is wrong with me. And that, like, but there's a guy gave me this book one day because when I was doing the addiction studies, he gave me a book, Bradshaw the Family, amazing book, absolutely amazing. But then in that as well, what he gave, I met him again a few months later. He said, Dave, I'm walking in like down the road, mate. He said, I've got another book for you. I've got another book, it'd be great. So this guy, Owen, he gave me a book, Adult Children of Alcoholics. And in that book, what it did for me was showed me there's a poem in it, Why Do You Come? And it's that pull and push. And that helped me see I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. It happens to so many people. I'm not alone. That happens. And that pull and push, that's the part that nearly broke me because I thought it was just me and I was FUCKED. But the reality of it is that I'm not, and that like it's great to have meetings like this to come to where I can simply identify with everybody and anybody, no matter what they say. I have everything going on, really. Like, I'm an addict, big time, dependent, whatever you want to call it. So, thanks everybody. I wish everybody well, and please, if you're hurting or you need to share, come in.